You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1193. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I am so excited to have you here today, where we're helping you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. And you know what? Sometimes what you love shifts. Just recently, there's a new friend who is a friend of a friend that just moved back to town, and they moved to Michigan from another state where they were licensed, and they're looking at getting licensed in Michigan. And we were talking about, getting your license and getting supervision, and do I know a good supervisor, and all these things, that are normal for getting your counseling license. And, at one point I had a supervision practice that I ended up selling that supervision group to another supervisor, had a really great kind of flow going, but my interests changed. Those people had counted on me to be their supervisor. Over time, I decided that wasn't the direction I wanted to go anymore. And sometimes, we don't realize all the opportunities that we could have as therapists, psychologists, social workers, counselors. When we're licensed, there's a lot of handcuffs around that at times. And sometimes looking at coaching, looking at group programs, looking at how do we expand beyond that one-on-one into something maybe a little more national or international are things that we really want to do. And that's why I'm so excited to have Yuri Elkaim with me. Yuri is a former pro athlete, leading health expert, and renowned business coach, New York Times bestselling author, and the founder of Healthpreneur, where he helps health entrepreneurs, coaches, and practitioners start and scale online businesses that create more income and freedom and better results for their clients. Yuri, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Yeah, really excited to have you here. Tell me how you got into this work of helping healthcare coaches, counselors, therapists that are leveling up online.
Sure. So it actually started for me when I was a teenager. I was very active. Soccer was my passion growing up, but I didn't realize that I wasn't healthy. I was fit, but not healthy. And I didn't realize that until I lost all of my hair at the age of 17 to an autoimmune condition. So that really was a really interesting moment in my life, and that it was the best thing that ever happened for me because it prompted me into this world of, well, let me figure this out for myself. And I went down the rabbit hole of seeing every practitioner I could think of, and then it led me into studies around kinesiology and health sciences and nutrition. And that whole journey allowed me to not only help solve some of my own health issues, but ultimately recognize the immense passion I had for helping others with their health. And that was where it started. I started off working as a nutritionist and trainer one-on-one, very much like a lot of the listeners here, and working 12 to 16 hours a day, overworked, underpaid. And I did that for 7 years, and I was just burnt out. And I knew that I wanted to serve more people. I wanted to have a bigger impact on this in this world, and I also wanted to have a life. And so in 2005, I had no clue what I was doing, but I decided to start an online business, which was at the time helping the average consumer improve their health, weight loss, energy, kind of a generalist, which was mistake number one. After many years of struggle and poverty line income, I eventually got some mentorship and coaching, and I started to get some traction with that business. And over the next, from the time of its conception, over the next decade and a little bit, it became one of the biggest health brands on the internet. We helped 500,000 people to better health. As you mentioned, I was a New York Times bestselling author, Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I was on Dr. Oz, The Doctors, all the big media. And over, being in that space for 15 plus years, I just got to a point where my mission was always to help 1 billion people. I don't know why 1 billion, but I figured, hey, that's a big number. Let's go for it. And I realized that I'd gotten to a point with that business where I was, again, in the same position I was before. I was burnt out. My business was way too complicated. It was a Medusa with 1,000 heads, and I wanted to get out of it. And at the same time, I had a lot of other health practitioners coming to me for business advice because they saw what we were doing online. Like, hey, can I pick your brain? And it just kept happening. So I thought to myself, well, maybe this is chapter two. Maybe this is what I was, this initial chapter of building my health business has given me the opportunity now to help others with their businesses. Because if I can help the helpers, then we can help more people. And that's where Healthpreneur really was born. And that was back in 2017. And over the past 8 years now, we've been helping thousands of practitioners and therapists grow their businesses specifically online and help them create more impacts and also live a much better quality of life in the process. And that's really kind of like in a nutshell of the whole story to where we are today. And it's something I'm immensely passionate about, and I love working with our industry. I don't think there is a profession on the planet that does more important work than what we do. When I say we, I mean us health practitioners and therapists. And it's something I'm going to do until the day I die. Like, I absolutely love helping the healers because it's so needed. And unfortunately, we spend so many years in school and so much money on education, and it's an absolute catastrophe that practitioners are allowed into the wild with zero business skills. And we bridge the gap that the education system failed to provide us. And so when we work with clients, we help them literally get a business education that the schooling system should have provided but never will. And we help them bridge that gap of building those skills, installing the right systems, and really thinking like a business owner, not just like a therapist or practitioner.
Preach it. Oh my gosh. So when you think about why the average clinician doesn't break out of one-on-one, they're showing up in their office, they're doing marriage therapy, trauma therapy, whatever they're working on. Like, what are the reasons that they don't break out of that to think bigger in regards to going beyond one-on-one?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it comes down to two things. One is they don't even know what the alternative is. Or number two, they don't believe the alternative is better. And for instance, we get a tremendous, I mean, when I say we, I mean myself. I get a tremendous amount of backlash in my ads, social media posts when I'm saying stuff like one-on-one is killing your health practice. Now, it's a very bold statement, and there's two camps. One camp that is very vocal in the comments is you're all about the money, you don't care about helping people, group or anything else can never replace one-on-one. And I completely understand that, right? That's also the way that a lot of the world saw things like Netflix, while Blockbuster was, the talk of the town. It was also, when digital photography was becoming a thing, a lot of companies like Kodak, who actually invented digital photography, wanted to ignore it. So I understand there's a lot of resistance anytime we present something new that challenges the status quo, that challenges the way things have been done forever. And all I'm asking is that again, it doesn't matter to me, but it's like if you're fine with one-on-one and you're happy with that model, amazing. But if you know that, number one, fundamentally it's a flawed model, because I call it a transactional model. So you work with a client or a patient, and you bill by the hour, you bill by the session. That patient or that client gets a bit of help during that time, you get paid. Now, if you go away for a week, or if you get sick for a week, that client doesn't see you, they don't get helped, you don't get paid. And that's not a business, that's a job. And it's not scalable, it's not sustainable. Like, if you can't get paid independent of the time you put in with clients, and if your clients can't make progress on their own independent of their relying on you or their time with you, that is a fundamentally flawed business model. So again, totally cool. Like there's a lot of practitioners and therapists that want to keep doing the one-on-one. You can charge $1,000 an hour if you want, but you have to understand there is no way out of that. You hit what I call a capacity ceiling, where you can only work so many hours, and beyond that, your revenue is capped and the number of people you can help is capped. So there are ways, and there's what we've seen over the past 7 years, there are much more effective ways. And I'm not discounting one-on-one. Sure, it has its place. But we've worked Like our best clients are therapists. And I'm talking like, as an example, one of our clients, Russell, he deals with porn and sex addiction. Okay, that's his market. He was a clinic, he had a clinic in Maine, and he had a waiting list of like 4 or 5 months before he started working with us. And he was the supervisor of the clinic, and he saw for many, many years what was happening there. And when he transitions to working with clients online in a group format, at first you're thinking, there's no way. Like someone who's working with men, porn and sex addiction, like, is that even possible? But what he's found is that number one, this community that he's built has been massively important for those men because isolation kills and community heals. And so his men who are dealing with a very sensitive, you would think, almost shameful type of condition have gotten better results because they're part of a community, have gotten better results because they're part of a program where they have to be more proactive in their own healing journey. They don't just show up for a one-on-one therapy session. There's an actual curriculum with support on top of that where they take more ownership. And when our clients or patients take more ownership of the process, they get better results. And that's fundamentally why moving away from one-on-one, we have found, has produced better results for our clients' clients. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who've taken the reins back over their physical health, their mental health. And our clients, here's the thing is like, people listening to this, you have the one thing you can't replace is the expertise you have. The challenge, though, is being able to extract your expertise and to some extent productize it, where you can now create intellectual property, whether that's a curriculum or tools and habits and skills that you can empower your clients to start to develop themselves. Now we teach our clients how to fish. Now we actually empower them to be more proactive in their own journey. And that's why they're able to get better results. And the cool thing is they get better results without relying on you every step of the way. And so that's, for me personally, why I'm a big fan of moving to more of a leveraged group model. And again, what I come back to is it's never at the expense of your clients. It's in the service of them. So everything I talk about, whether it's charging more, moving to more of a group model, it's always about what's going to produce better results for our clients. And listen, we have many clients that still do one-on-one, or they continue with one-on-one as a component of their coaching program, but it's not the sole focus, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So maybe give us a menu of the types of things that the average one-on-one therapist might not even be like thinking about that they could step into.
Yeah. So we call this, if you think of a 3-layered cake, I call this the 3C model. So at the very base, we have curriculum. Curriculum is the base by which you buy back the majority of your time. Now, in order for that to even be possible, the first thing we have to recognize as business owners is we have to make a very important decision, which is, who do I want to specialize in serving? Because just because you can help a lot of people doesn't mean you should. Just because you can help a lot of different conditions doesn't mean you should. So if you're already a specialist, if you already deal with, couples and marriage stuff, amazing. But if you're more of a generalist, the first thing you have to understand is there is no way out of the rat race until you specialize. Because if you don't specialize, you cannot create a curriculum. And if you can't create a curriculum, you can't buy back your time and create leverage. So the first thing we have to do is select a single target audience, which is based around a problem, a bleeding neck problem that people want to solve, which for the most part is the usual stuff that most of us do anyways. But the thing is, when you are in private practice, a lot of times, people fall into your lap from referrals, whether it's, doctors or friends or family. But when we start transitioning to building something, especially online, we're having to fight against a really strong current, which is called obscurity. No one knows you exist. And in order to get visible, you have to learn marketing. You have to learn self-promotion. It's very hard to do that if you're a generalist because your messaging is vague. It doesn't land on anyone. It's just okay, but you want to be seen as a specialist. So everyone wants a specialist. Everyone would rather go to the best Italian restaurant in town as opposed to getting pizza at a buffet. And so the same goes for our business. So once we've identified that single target market that we want to be a hero to, then we can start to build out that first step, which is a curriculum. So the way I think about a curriculum is think of a self-paced, self-directed online quote unquote course that someone would log into, like on Kajabi or any of these online platforms, and they can go through a series of trainings, videos, modules. But the key is that it's not a course, because most people don't actually start or finish a course on their own, so they don't actually get results. But it's really, the way we look at it is, how do we help these clients adopt and build very specific skills and habits? So it's not about you're going to get these 12 modules and hundreds of hours of videos. It's every single day and every single week, we're going to focus on helping you install the right habits or skills into your being, so you become the type of person who gets the results you're after. And that's the big shift in the way that we work with clients. If we're working with someone around, if we have a client who is a family, therapist around marriage stuff. Okay, if you're working with both the men and women, what is, like, based on your expertise, how do you coach them? How do you guide them to build the skill or habit? Maybe it's a daily sit down for 30 minutes to connect, and that's the focus of week one. And so it's not about watch 30 minutes of videos. It's about really thinking as you, the expert. If I never, ever, ever, this is a good question. If you never spoke to your clients, what could that curriculum contain that would help them get the result they're after in a utopian world? If you never spoke with your clients, how could you build that curriculum in such a way where they could literally go through it on their own and get closer to or get the full results? And it starts to really help you think through the intricacies of what that client experience could look like. So the curriculum is step one. That's the base. And once you have that, then when you're hanging out with your kids or if you're on an airplane, your clients can still make progress on their own, because they, again, are the ones that are self-directing their own process. Above that, the second C is community. So if you choose to move into more of a group-based model, then you'll have a community of clients. And that community provides a tremendous amount of peer-to-peer support. And we have found that it's one thing for the practitioner to provide accountability to the clients, but it's actually more powerful if that accountability and support comes from your peers, because we become the reflection of our peer group. We become a reflection of the standards of our peer group. So when you have a community of clients, whether that's 5, 50, 100, doesn't matter. When you have like-minded individuals who are all here because they have the same problem, they're all positive, forward thinking, and they're all moving toward the same direction, it is very rare in real life to find that group of people. Very few people feel understood. Very few people think that people around them even understand what they're going through. So you, as the practitioner or therapist, are able to create a container where now these individuals have a tribe. They have a second family who gets them. And that community becomes very, very powerful, because now it's not just about you and the interaction with the client, it's the client's experience in that entire community. And that becomes infinitely valuable in ways that you probably can't even think about or measure with, current thinking at this time. So we have curriculum, then we have community. And then on top of that, we have coaching. So the coaching piece is really where, and again, if it's coaching or therapy, it's totally up to you. But the coaching piece is really at the top. If we think of this as a wedding cake, it's the smallest piece relative to the bottom. Because what we want to flip this model around is, it's not, trading time for money forever and a little bit of curriculum. It's we're empowering the client to do more of the work. And at the top, we provide our coaching, whether that's in group calls, whether that's in one-on-one office hours, whether that's in accountability check-ins, or however you want to set that up. But the key thing here is that we start to detach our time from our clients' results. And that's the key distinction, is how can you start to build an ecosystem where your clients get great results regardless of how much time they spend with you. As an example, and I'll just finish with this, a number of years ago, I hosted a daily coaching call for our clients. Now, we work with hundreds of clients at the same time, and we've got an amazing coaching team around me. So it's not just the Yuri show. But a number of years ago, I still felt that was really, really important and necessary for our clients' results. So I offered 7 days a week, a coaching call in a group format. We'd have anywhere from about 10 to 25 people on those calls. And after doing that for quite some time, I started to think, well, I don't really know if all these calls are necessary. I don't really know if they're really moving the needle. So I decided to cut down from 7 days to 3 days. And so in that process, our clients were still getting support from other expert coaches we had on the team. But for me, it was down to 3 days. And lo and behold, guess what happened? Our clients started getting better results because there were other things that we were doing in the coaching program that were more important than them spending time with me. And so what I started to realize was it wasn't how much time clients spend with me. It's about how do we create the right ecosystem and the right tools to help our clients succeed independent of how much time they spend with me or any of the other coaches in our program. And that's fundamentally what we help our clients do with theirs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my wheels are turning. I love this model. I'm so excited to introduce you to the best website designers out there. We have a brand new partnership with Session Sites. It is where good therapy meets brilliant design, and they get your website switched over or built in less than 2 weeks. They fine-tune your messaging, use science-backed user experience methodology, and work exclusively with mental health professionals. In fact, new clients right now are going to get 3 free therapy marketing strategy calls with their creative director of Session Sites if you book today. You're not going to want to miss this. Head on over to sessionsites.com/Joe. Again, that's sessionsites.com/Joe. Get the website of your dreams today. Sessionsites.com/Joe. So, when I think about people that have really good quality content, a lot of these folks are in therapy, they're helping people, they know the clinical side really well. But then there's often these barriers when they think about putting it into video form, putting it into curriculum form, how to market it. So when we're thinking about first the content side of curriculum, community, and coaching, how do we best get that out of our brains into something that people will purchase?
Yeah. So I mean, like there's let's call it, I mean, if we divide this into two pieces, curriculum is like after purchase, and then everything else is before purchase. So I think the number one thing to remember is it's always useful to have a framework before you do the work. So one of the big things that we spend a lot of time building out in our business are frameworks that allow our clients to see things a little bit differently. So as an example, if you're sharing a piece of content, whether it's video or a presentation, there's a really simple format which I didn't invent. So it was actually developed by a teacher in Australia whose name I cannot remember, but it's actually called format. And so if you think of the journey of any content, it's why, what, how, now. So if I'm shooting a video for social media, or if I'm creating a lesson inside my curriculum, I always want to think about, okay, why is this important? Why does this matter to the person watching this? Second thing is, okay, here's what we're going to talk about. Here's really quickly what I want to share with you. Third is, here's how we're going to do this. Here's how we implement this. And then the fourth piece is now do this thing. So it's kind of taking the concept and putting it into action. So when we have a simple framework like that, whether we're doing a 30-minute presentation or a 10-minute teaching video, or even a 2-minute video on a piece of content on social media, that can become a very simple framework by which we can use as a lens. Because what happens a lot of times is we just blab and we just talk without much of a roadmap for what actually pulls people in. Because if we just start talking about something with no context, then everyone listening or watching is like, well, what does this even matter? Like, what does this even matter to me? And so it's always really helpful to have that type of a simple framework in this case as a starting point, because now you can think of, okay, well, I'm going to talk about this concept. Here's why it matters. If you have this installed, if you don't, here are the challenges. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how specifically we do it. And then once you finish this video, here's the one thing I want you to do next. And that's a simple framework that anyone can use for as a starting point, building out the lessons in the respective curriculum.
Now, what have your most successful clients done to grow their businesses? Like how did they market? How do they position themselves in niches? Like, what's the common denominator between your top clients you've worked with?
Yeah. So all of our clients, we basically help them build out a very similar business model. So the number one problem, as I mentioned before, is that When you move out of in-person private practice or kind of clinical settings, you're like a fish lost at sea. So no one knows you exist. And so you have to proactively put yourself out there. There's a lot of ways you can do that. And quite honestly, most of them are a complete waste of time. Again, I've been at this for 20 years, so I've kind of like done a lot of stuff and I've wasted a lot of time, learning this. So what we help our clients do on the marketing side is we help them build and install a simple four-step model for attracting clients that we call the perfect client pipeline. So in a nutshell, it's running social media ads to an evergreen webinar or a masterclass. From that masterclass, the right people who qualify based on some specific criteria fill out an application to speak with you, and then the final piece is a discovery call. So those are the four steps. That's how we've built our business from zero to multiple eight figures, and that's exactly how we've helped thousands of our clients do the same. Now, anyone can build a funnel. Like, that's not the hard part. The hard part is understanding the messaging and the offer, because there's a very, very big difference when we're building a business virtually, and that's trust. When someone walks into a clinic, they're virtually sold already. Like, they're in. Like, it's like you have that physical presence. Nothing can build trust faster than being with someone in person. So when we're doing stuff online, we have to understand the biggest barrier other than obscurity is no one trusts you. So we really have to keep that into consideration around, okay, how do we build messaging that speaks to people's experiences so they feel like you actually get them? And how do we craft an offer? When I say offer, that could be, what's the offer of the webinar? Like, why should I even watch this? From the webinar, why should I even bother booking a call? Like, what's in it for me as the prospect? And then once we do have someone on that call, how do we present our solution, whether that's a coaching program or service, in a way that the prospect sees the value and is willing to commit to that? So we help our clients really dial that stuff in, because that's where businesses go to die in a lot of cases. And the problem, again, is that a lot of practitioners are not business owners. They don't see the world through the lens of marketing and positioning, which is everything. And it's not to say that you have to become gimmicky, not at all, but you have to understand how to speak to people in a way where you sell them what they want and give them what they need. And that's not necessarily the default setting for most therapists and practitioners. And so that's a big piece of what we do with our clients. The second thing that our most successful clients have in common is they're very clear in their philosophy. They're very opinionated. They're very clear about what they stand for and stand against. And they have a certain magnetic energy that people want to be around. And it's something that you can pick up on video. Like, you can see them on video, and in a second, you just know that these people are experts. And so for me, having done this for so long, I can see someone on a Zoom call in 5 seconds, and I know if they'll be successful or not, just based on their presence. And our most successful clients have that. And I think the benefit to everyone listening here is that you have the one thing that newbies maybe don't have, which is experience. So if you have a track record, if you've been in the trenches for a long time, you can help people, like, assuming they're the right fit for you. And when you bring that type of presence and authority and compassion to the marketplace, you have a competitive advantage in a way that most people can't compete with. So they're very clear, they're very articulate, they speak their truth. And then with respect, because at the end of the day, people choose coaches or therapists, not just coaching or therapy. So that human piece is very important. And the first piece I mentioned, which is really around the messaging and the offer, the differentiation is massively important as well. So those are the two components that we really help our clients zero in on.
Now, I know sometimes people have unrealistic expectations. Like, if I just put up this evergreen webinar, then I'll get applications, then I'll get, people calling. And I know that, like, every case is different, but are there, like, industry rules of thumb, like, for every 100 people that come to an evergreen webinar, like, what percent will typically fill out an application, and then what percent will end up converting in that discovery call?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, we have certain metrics in our business that we guide our clients on, but it really depends. Like, I'll give you an example. So in the world of weight loss, that's a very, very tricky thing to make work nowadays. And the reason for that is because excessively competitive. Like I'm a big fan of competitive markets because it means there's a lot of demand and there's a lot of money there and a lot of people want to solve problems. But the challenge with weight loss is that you're competing with quick fix solutions like Ozempic now. You're competing with like a million different solutions. So we have found, especially in the last couple of years, weight loss has become increasingly challenging to make work. So when we look at certain milestone metrics, especially from cold traffic, so people who don't already follow you, for instance, on social media, the metrics don't really hold up as well. If we look at some of our other clients who, for instance, one of our incredible clients, Ashley, she helps those grieving from suicide loss. Her metrics are insane in a good way because it's a very needed service and so low in supply. There are very few people, I mean, compared to weight loss as an example, who do what she does. So when she puts her stuff into the marketplace, all of her numbers are better because there's just less of her or less of people like her doing what they do. But generally speaking, if you, and again, it all depends on the messaging and the offer and one's ability and willingness to tweak and course correct over time. But generally, if you're putting, and I'm going to speak from advertising to cold audiences, so people who don't even know you. If you put out an ad and it's doing fairly well, you get, let's say, 100 registrants. From those 100 registrants, you're looking at about ideally 3 people to book a call with you. Let's assume that one of them doesn't show or cancels. You have 2 calls, and 1 out of 3 people you speak with ideally enrolls with you, and ideally enrolls with you at a premium price point. So $2,000 to $5,000 or higher for an outcome, not by the session or by the hour. So those are like very basic numbers that we look at as a starting point. And, on average, our clients see about a 314% return on ad spend. So for every dollar they put into advertising, they're making $3.14 back in return. We have clients that do way more than that. We have some clients that do a little bit less, again, depending on their messaging, depending on the strength of their offer. But that's generally, kind of the average ballpark of what we're looking at.
Mm. I mean, I think it's so important to understand those basics of the numbers and the workflow, and then also to the creative side and that like heart side of like what you were saying about the people that show up on the calls that you're just like, I know they're going to kill it. Yuri, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would say, think bigger and get out of your own way for the sake of other people. And that's, again, there's probably a lot of things I would say, but I think what I mean by that is every single person listening to this has a gift that can transform the lives of a lot of people. I'm not saying that it's everyone's responsibility to go out and serve hundreds of thousands of people. I get that. But I think a lot of practitioners, myself included back in the day, were very or are very constrained in their thinking, and they play small. They don't charge what they're worth. They don't think big enough. They do what they've been told based on how they've been brought up in the school system, and that's fine because that's what we know. But I would really, really encourage everyone listening to really think big and remember that you are all alchemists that can turn people's lead into gold. It really, really is a superpower. And when I say charging what you're worth, I'm not talking about charging and gouging people. I'm talking about actually providing, like you're already providing an incredible service and transformation for people you work with. You should be compensated accordingly. And it's not your job to help everyone on the planet. It's your job to help those who are willing to meet you where you're at. Because when you do that, you will attract unbelievable quality clients. And when you can fill up your cup, you can give so much more away to others. So I would just, encourage everyone to think bigger, think beyond, the current establishment and the way things have been done, because there are much more effective ways of helping people, including yourself.
Mm. So awesome. Yuri, if people want to work with you, if they want to get some help, where should we send them?
Probably the best place is Instagram. If you want to just send me we've got a couple free resources right there. So I'm at Healthpreneur. We actually have a free course right on the page. You can just type course into the comments, and it's a 12-part video series where we're going to give you like some of our best stuff in terms of some of the stuff we've explored here. And then, yeah, just shoot me a message on Instagram saying you saw me on that or heard me on the podcast. And if there's anything we can do to support you, happy to have a conversation around what that might look like.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, it's got my wheels turning in regards to how we have our workflow with our membership community, with our one-on-one consulting, with just that whole flow of kind of looking at it and think about our numbers. And yeah, I think one of the big things that he said around marketing and positioning that I wrote down, I put a bunch of exclamation points, is sell what they want. And then give them what they need. To me, that's my big takeaway. I have a ton of notes today. I've got that cake drawn here in my notes of curriculum, community, coaching. I've got the why, what, how, now, tons of notes, evergreen application, discovery call. So would love to hear about your notes. If you take notes during this show, take a picture and send it to me on Instagram. I would love to see that. We could not do this show without our partners, and Session Sites is our newest partner. They help you optimize your website. They help make your website designed for engagement. And even better, your site's going to be live in 3 weeks. So whether you haven't touched it in years or you're starting from scratch, they have an awesome deal going on. Just head on over to sessionsites.com/Joe. Again, that's sessionsites.com/Joe to get that website that you absolutely deserve. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music. And this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.